So, how to make paper towels or napkins. And this was just a very general kind of research that I did about like paper towel or they kind of generalize it as like tissue paper waste, which includes like toilet paper as well. But yeah, Americans waste nearly 300,000 tons of paper towels in 1 year. And as I'm sure most of you are aware, you can't recycle paper towels. So if you don't compost, then all those just go into the landfill. And then, yeah, eliminating just a ton can save a ton of energy, water, and air pollution as well. And then, yeah, one cloth towel, and these statistics vary, like depending on which websites you go to, but yeah, one cloth towel can equal up to 7,300 paper towels. So this will reduce your waste quite a bit. Cool. So the first step is kind of just gathering the supplies that you need. Some sort of like fabric or old sheet. I used an old sheet just because I didn't want to have to go and purchase anything to do this. Yeah, and then lots of videos that I watched. There's also, my videos are pretty short and sped up. So if you want to find more detailed ones, there's definitely a lot online for that. And a lot of them were saying that flannel is like a good absorbent material. And then some sort of like old towel or washcloth, a pair of scissors, a pen or Sharpie, a ruler. I didn't have a ruler, so I just used like this whiteboard as a straight edge, and then sewing materials. And so what you're first gonna do is lay out the sheet so you're gonna lay out the towel or washcloth first, and then gonna section off into the size that you want your unpaper towels to be. And then you're gonna section off the sheet or fabric or whatever you're using to fit on top of those towel sections so that they can be the same size. And then you can use your pen or straight edge to mark out the size, and then you can cut it with your scissors. And then you're just gonna sew the two sheets together. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple. This one doesn't have a whole lot of steps. And yeah, like I said, this is also just one example. So how to remove the sticky labels off of glass jars. So the materials that you will need for this is baking soda, any type of cooking oil. I just used vegetable oil because that's what I had, but you can, coconut oil, olive oil, any type of oil like that would be fine. And then you're gonna want some type of like container to put your jar in once it's soaking in a solution. And then obviously you're gonna want some type of glass jar with a label on it that you're going to want to remove. All right, and then to begin, you're just gonna want to wash your jar out and make sure there isn't any like food contents or residue or any leftover things like that inside of it. It doesn't really matter if it's dry or not for this experiment, but yeah, and then you're going to run the glass jar under hot water, kind of as hot as your hands can handle. And then like just peel off with your nails and your fingers as much of the label as you can. And it kind of depends on what jar it is. Some of the labels are really hard to get off, and some of them are really easy to get off. This one was pretty easy. But yeah, depending on the difficulty, you might have to use like more or less force, but it's not a huge deal that you get all of it off at this step. It's just get as much as possible so that the rest will be easier. And then you're going to pour the oil just around the jar where the sticker was, and then just kind of like rub it in as much as you can, and then sprinkle the baking powder or the baking soda on top of it, and then rub that in as well. I haven't found that the ratios really matter too much with this. Just kind of like enough that it's getting all the way around on those sticky parts, and make it like pretty even in regards to the amount of oil and baking soda. And then you're going to put the jar into a container and let that soak All the videos that I've seen say like at least a couple of hours. When I do it, I usually just leave it overnight, because the longer, you know, you leave it kind of soaking in that, the easier it is to get the excess off. And then the last step is after it's done soaking, to just run it through like hot water again, and using some sort of like scrubber or sponge can really help get the excess stuff off as well. Yeah, and then like I mentioned earlier, sometimes like it's, you know, a lot stickier than others, so you might have to run through the whole steps again if it's still super sticky when you get to the part where you're trying to wash it off. And then, yeah, now you have like a clean and label-free jar. And so what was kind of like the purpose of this, or why I like to do this, is now you can store it with like food and snacks in it without getting confused about like what the contents are, and then like forgetting what it is, and then the stuff in there goes bad. And then you can store like all different types of things in it. Like I have one at my desk that has all my highlighters in it. Yeah, and then you can use it as a cup, put smoothies or anything like that in there. And then also like painting and decorating the outside can be like a fun little craft to do. The reusable period pads. And this one is definitely a little bit more work, I guess, than the other ones. But it's also like, this is something I've been wanting to like learn how to do for a really long time, and it's definitely not as hard or as daunting as I thought it was going to be. Yeah, and also if any of you like don't know how to sew, I am terrible at sewing. I think I learned like last year at the Zero Waste conference, and that also is not as hard as I thought it was going to be. So it's pretty easy to learn how to sew. But yeah, so how to make reusable period pads. Again, I did kind of just a vague little research on like how much waste period pads are, and like what happens to them after. So they take like hundreds and hundreds of years to decompose. And a lot of like sites were saying that one pad is like equal to 4 plastic bags. And it was saying that we use about 50 pads per month. And then, yeah, so this like, you know, a one-time use, and then on average, you use about 3 pads per day. And then with reusable pads, yeah, this is the number of pads. So this is number of pads used per day, and this is number of pads used per cycle. So in comparison, it's 3 disposable pads per day, and then 6 per cycle of reusable pads. So that's pretty awesome. And it lasts like a lot longer as well. Yeah, and then just the comparison, like the number generated in a lifetime, like that difference is like substantial. So that's pretty awesome. Cool. So step 1 again is the supplies that you're going to need. Some type of like piece of scratch paper, and then a pen or Sharpie again, scissors, and then, yeah, some type of fabric. Again, I didn't want to buy anything, so I just used like something that I cut from like a shirt that I had. And then another like old towel or washcloth, sewing materials. And then I used a button for this. And again, like most of the tutorial videos that I watched, they use like those little like snap buttons, which would probably be easier in terms of like taking it on and off. But again, I had a button, so I just used that. And I think that would, you know, work just as well. It just might not be as easy. Okay, and then you're going to draw a rough shape of the size and shape of the pad that you want. I think the one that I did was a little bit small. So if you like, yeah, I mean, just keeping in mind, like you might want to make the size and shape a little bit bigger than you think you will. And if you have any pads already, like you could use that as like a stencil as well. And then you're going to want to cut 2 pieces of the fabric to be, you know, into that shape, and using this kind of as a stencil. And then you're going to cut the towel or washcloth so that it fits down like the center of the 2 pieces of pad that you just made. And then you're going to set one of the pieces aside and then sew the towel to the center of the other one. And then you're going, after you're done sewing that towel to one side of the pad, you're going to turn it and put the towel so it's face down. And then you're going to get the other side and sew those two together. And you're going to want to leave like one of these little flaps unsewn because you're going to do something with that later. So you want it to be open for now. Yeah, and so then you're leaving that one side open because you're going to turn the pad inside out so that the towel is now like in the middle of it and you don't see it. And then you're going, and then after you do that, you can like sew the side that you left open closed. And then, yeah, and then the last kind of step is just sewing the button on. So just picking one of the sides, I kind of felt like it was better to pick the side that was already sewn to put the button on it, just because it's a little bit like thicker, and I thought it would be easier to kind of like cut the slit in the side that was that you had just sewn. But it doesn't really matter in terms of that. I just, in my head, that made more sense to do it that way. But yeah, so then you just sew the button onto one side and then cut a little slit on the other side so that the button can go through. And then you have your finished pad. Cool. So that's all the presentations and the videos that I have. Yeah, does anyone have any like questions or anything about any of that? Or want me to put any of those things in the chat for you to refer to?
So for the pads, when you said to flip it inside out, so you sew it on one side and then you flip it inwards?
Yeah, so when, let me see, I'm gonna pull up yeah, that part was a little bit confusing for me too in the video that I watched. It's hard to kind of like visualize it unless you're actually like doing it.
It makes sense though, because then you don't see the stitching seams.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why she did it too. Let's see. So yeah, you have one of the pads and then you're sewing the towel to this, and then once you turn it over, then you're sewing like the other one on top of this. And then, yeah, you just like stick your fingers into like the open side. And then, yeah, kind of just like push it out, I guess. I think it, like, if you actually do it, I think it'll be like a little bit, it'll make more sense. It's kind of hard to explain. And these pictures definitely aren't great. And that video too, like, I think the side was like covering it. So I don't know if you guys could see what I was doing very well on that either. Do you know the durability of pads? Oh, thank you for asking that. I forgot to mention that in the video. So for that, I think it depends on you personally and like your flow. I have a pretty light flow, so I only use like one strip of the towel in mine. But some of the videos I watched, if you have like a heavier flow, they put like two strips of the towel on it stacked on top. And yeah, I feel like if your flow is heavier, you could potentially even put 3. But it's definitely like a trial and error for sure. Like I said, mine, I think like size wise, this was the first one I made, and I think it's a little bit small. I think it'll work, but yeah, definitely like after making it the first time, I'm thinking like size wise, I'm gonna want it to be a little bit bigger. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And yeah, definitely, Crystal, it is definitely fun to have different colors and festive around the house too. And then yeah, I only made one of them, but if you make like a bunch of them, then you could like use it as a roll, and it'll be on, you can get one of those like, you know, things the paper towel roll goes on and just like wrap it around and use it as that. So yeah. Okay.
Cute banana
It,
peel.
what was that, Karina?
Like it looks like a cute banana peel.
Oh my, this.
So cute.
It does. I know, I'm excited to like, try it out. The button does make me a little nervous. I think that might be kind of hard to get on and off. But I think it could be cool too. So cool. Yeah, it's a little bit early. Does anyone have any other like questions or anything?
Instead of a regular button, could you use kind of like those snap-on buttons?
Yeah, that's what a lot of the videos that I saw used. And I have a couple of reusable pads that I bought like on a zero waste website online, and that's what they used as well. Yeah, I think that would probably be better. I just didn't have that in my house or at my disposal, so I just kind of went with what I had. But yeah, I think that would be better.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.